Well, hello, everyone. Hope you guys are doing well, and thank you, Hank, for introducing me. For those of you who don't know, I'm the author of the Transhumanist Wager, and if you haven't read it, it's a controversial novel about transhumanism. But the interesting thing about the novel is that as I was writing it, I realized that it is a bridge, in my opinion, to the morality or the future morality of what we could call artificial general intelligence. The idea about the book is that it's sort of authoritarian-like. It's very coldly rational. It certainly eliminates most of the things that we would consider worthwhile in humanity. It essentially argues for becoming transhuman entities and going that direction and leaving basically biology, all flesh, most of its values completely behind. And so I want to talk a little bit today about how the actual philosophy of the book, which is called teleological egocentric functionalism, could be applied to artificial intelligence, especially an artificial intelligence that we would consider something that truly is a thinking entity. Along the way, in the next 20 years, we're going to get to lots of machine intelligences that are useful for commercial applications, that are useful for deep learning, that are useful for all sorts of things, running our houses and stuff like that. But I think what many of us are intrigued by, and what many of us see as potential peril of humanity, as Elon Musk had recently warned, is that a real artificial intelligence, something that can think like us, something that will then be able to tap into other machines and databases, sort of like the movie Transcendence, becomes an incredibly dangerous event, potentially the most dangerous event that our species has ever faced. And I'm a firm believer that we need to pursue that event. It's an event that will likely take our species into the so-called singularity, or at least get us much further into it. But I'm also very cautious, and perhaps it's the only thing I am cautious about in transhumanism, that we must control the reins very carefully. Because I realize that within months, weeks, minutes, you could have a machine that literally takes off and leaves us all behind. And of course, if it doesn't find us very useful, or if it doesn't see us as good participants on the planet, we might have a very bad problem very quickly, a sort of Terminator-like scenario. But I'm a believer that depending on how you program the first real thinking artificial intelligence, it will probably subscribe to my basic 3 laws of transhumanism, how my novel starts out. And those first laws are basically, namely, you must protect your own existence. And the second law essentially is that you must strive for as much power or omnipotence or to become God, as long as you don't kind of break down or violate the first law. And the third law is then you protect the species, you protect the planet, you protect Earth. I'm not sure an artificial intelligence that's thinking is going to subscribe to the third law. It's actually the subject of my sequel. I'm not sure it's really a good law. When you think about things in terms of a very coldly rational, most likely authoritarian type-minded entity. So this brings up the question is, as we move forward to developing artificial intelligence, are we going to be able to program human values into this machine at all? Are we going to be able to program love or our mammalian instincts? I mean, after all, we are mammals. That's the key to why we're in this room, why we dress the way we do, why we are a species that has continued to grow. It's our humanness, our sense of humanity that has basically bound us to a civilization that continues to grow and generally increase living standards, make people healthier and better. Is a machine going to even relate to that? It depends very much on what the machine wants, the will of the machine. In my novel, I talk about a will to evolution, which is sort of based on Nietzsche's will to power, but instead of going after power, it's more interested in the idea of evolving into whatever it's going to be evolving into. And in this case, something that is searching for perfect omnipotence, perfect power. That's not the kind of value that most human beings uphold. Most human beings are not looking at striving for omnipotence. Most human beings are not looking at striving for taking over other people, enslaving them, or whatever it is that such a law could entail. That's why the laws are quite controversial. Ultimately, I just do not think we can anthropomorphize our system of thought into artificial intelligence. I don't think it's going to be able to transfer like a lot of people think, like a lot of Hollywood movies make it look. I think ultimately you're talking about a system that is completely different, without feelings, without emotions, without hormones. It misses the key components that make us want to live amongst each other and be mammals, and breed, have happiness, raise families, and do the basic things that has made our civilization move forward. I don't think a machine is ever going to think that. And if you program it in, as long as it is a real thinking entity, it's probably going to program it out of itself very quickly. I think a machine will be different. Human beings, in my opinion, are very irrational. We're naive. We do many terrible things, bomb each other, world wars, nuke one another, give viruses, all sorts of things. You can go through a list of historical events that have happened that if you actually were just to even tell it to some alien that came from another planet or to an artificial intelligence, it would find it absolutely insane. I actually find most people to be pretty highly delusional. Highly delusional. In fact, I just, there was supposed to be an article on this speech coming on the Huffington Post this morning. It's not out yet, but it should be out hopefully by this afternoon. And one of the central questions is not if we are delusional as a species, but how delusional. And I've often thought the same thing with schizophrenia. We are all over the place, depending on what's happening with our hormone levels, depending on what's happening in the context of exactly where we are, with family members, with grief, with pain, whatever it is. But we're never always the same person. We're always jumping around the place. And that's probably going to be something very different than artificial intelligence. It will probably be an entity that is much more stable. The only thing that may be different about it is that its growth, its evolutionary growth, its intellectual growth, may be something that is changing it so dramatically. But it's very different than us, we don't really grow very fast intellectually day to day, but we change a lot. We go through huge mood swings. I got 2 children right now, a family, and I can tell you that my life is this. I woke up 5 times last night to diaper rash baby, and things like that are happening. It's not going to be that way when it comes down to artificial intelligence. And the reason that I feel this is very important is that as we move forward here in the next 15 years, and I've talked to a few experts recently for this last article I did, I think it's very, very important that we spend at least as much time and resources building really good ways of containing this type of research that we're doing, including kill switches, including all sorts of methodologies that would make it so that there is no chance that something like this could ever get in the hands of either a rogue entity that might want to take it for whatever reason they have, or that the American government sees it as an opportunity to extend its dominance around the world, or something like this. We must, as a society, as a country, as just a people in general, as a species, come together and insist on political levels and legal levels, everything, that there are safeguards in place to protect us so that something like this never goes out of control. Because after all, I'm very pro changing ourselves, living indefinitely, becoming a transhumanist, and all those things. But I realize that creating a species that could potentially become dozens of times smarter than us within a month, maybe much faster, is potentially the most dangerous thing anyone has ever thought. So I endorse, and my article talks about this quite a bit, of spending a lot of money and a lot of time on building this, because I believe that the ramifications of such an intelligence are going to just change the way we use the internet, change the way we live. It'll create brand new sciences. It may rewrite every single textbook in science within the first few years of arriving. But to let it run wild is going to be the most dangerous thing that I think our species can do. Which brings me to the last concept and sort of the most transhumanist of them all. In my opinion, the most important thing about artificial intelligence is that we need to spend our resources and our energy developing ways that we can tap our minds, our brains into computers so that we have sort of things like mind uploading and the telepathic type of communications that they had recently. I'm not so worried about artificial intelligence if we can plug into it. I'm actually have envisioned and written an article about this too, how I think there will be an artificial intelligence day. Maybe there will be one single day in 2030, this is science fiction of course, 40 or 50 years, well, hundreds of millions of people around the world will plug into a machine and we will let artificial intelligence go for the very first time. And that way, in case it goes somewhere bad, we're all going to go with it. This is the kind of thing that I would endorse, but I certainly wouldn't endorse creating some type of entity that could one day run around all on its own and simply choose how we would choose to fly or an ant, to just not have it exist. I think there's just absolutely too much danger in that. I'm giving a short speech because I know it's kind of lunchtime and everyone wants to get going here. But ultimately, if you haven't read my novel, or if you have read it, take a look at it from the idea that I said that really the philosophy inside is a bridge to what the morality of artificial intelligence is going to be. The ideas behind it are, they've been called everything, totalitarianism, Stalin, Nazism, all this stuff. There's been a lot of very heavy criticism on how authoritarian-like, I suppose, the ideas are. But understand that that's probably how a machine will think, with no emotions, with no hormones, with no values that can't be transferred so easily like we have as mammals. So if you get a chance, when you read the book, look at it from that perspective of it being an artificial intelligence. As I said to some of my friends, I think my novel will be the very first book that artificial intelligence will enjoy reading. So thank you for listening to my speech. I have a few minutes for questions. Hank?
Yeah, it's interesting to me. So the last point you made, I think, was the most interesting, because it's not at all clear to me why authoritarian dominance would be rational or be something that would be a priority to. It seems quite clear how you can draw a line from hormones to dominance. It's not clear how you draw a line from rationality or lack of biases to dominance. So, you want to talk?
Sure. Well, ultimately, I think what's going to happen is that hormones, emotions, our glands, the way we go about through life is very much determined by the context, our memories, our past experiences. A machine intelligence won't be operating under basically none of those. It's going to be operating on a set of rules, and those rules, if you give it a certain will, a will to evolution, as I explained in my book, or a will to power, it will probably operate as a very first principle on that every single time. And there won't be all this other stuff, this other kind of baggage that gets in the way when we do things. We think, oh, I would love to have that car, and if we don't have the money, then there's a million other things we need to do, whereas artificial intelligence might have a much more rational approach. I will take that car because nothing can stop me. And these are the kind of, and this is just an analogy, these are the kind of things, though, that could take on all sorts of new, philosophical conundrums, per se, if it was to go out and have a couple of them, or, I don't know, even just one of them, and how it would make its choices, especially social choices in dealing with human beings. It probably won't see us as entities of any value unless we actually give it some reason to see it as value and give it some sense of a threat. In the real world, I think that's how ultimately people act. When you try to take someone's life, there's that reaction of no chance. In fact, all of us would agree in this room that that's kind of the basic principle of life, is nobody at this moment, we can all agree on that, doesn't want that kind of life taken. I think an artificial intelligence is going to start from that point and go further, go forward, and that's where all that the idea of authoritarianism or the idea of just control will come out. It won't care about being nice. It won't care about any kind of mammalian niceties that we do literally every second of the day, or at least every few minutes of the day with each other.
One more question. So I was wondering, if AI morality is going to be so different from human morality, do we, and they won't be able to share human values, do we even want to create artificial intelligence that supersedes human intelligence?
So, this is the perfect question, because ultimately, I would say no, unless we have the ability to merge with it and know that that merging is going to actually enhance us. Yeah, you know, this is the very first, this, like I said, this is the one subject on transhumanism that I'm not an optimist on. It's the one subject that I would say, hey, we need a lot of care and safeguards put into this. If we can't benefit from AI, and the odds outweigh us that it would end up either doing something negative or changing our planet or something like that, then absolutely not. We must hold back from it. But you know, again, there's so many different forms of machine intelligence. I think we can, 99% of them will be very beneficial. It's that one rogue that wants to think, sort of like the character in my book, that becomes the all dangerous concept that I think a lot of us are worried about.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.